Hello and welcome back to the Right Hand Podcast and another installment of Building Without a Blueprint. This series here is for the law firm owners who are building something without a traditional roadmap. This is for attorneys who became entrepreneurs, founders learning how to lead while they're still running a business, the first generation professionals and business owners who may not have had someone to show them when the next stage of growth is happening and what it should look like. Because this is the thing about building a law firm. There comes a point when working harder isn't the answer. Hiring more lawyers isn't necessarily the answer. Getting more clients isn't necessarily the answer. Sometimes what the firm actually needs is leadership around the business itself, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get into it. As usual, what we're going to do is we're going to start with a question. And at what point do you think a law firm needs someone whose job it is to make sure that firm actually runs with? And when I say this, I'm not saying not another attorney, not another paralegal, not someone who just simply handles the administrative tasks. What I'm asking is someone whose responsibility it is to look after the business of the firm. Someone who's going to think about the people, think about the process, someone who's going to be invested in exploring the technology, the workflow, the accountability, the performance of everyone at the firm, and help tighten up the rules of communication. And the question I often hear from law firm owners is, when am I actually big enough to hire someone like that? And the answer, it may surprise you. It's not necessarily about the number of attorneys that you have. It's about the complexity of the organization that you are trying to manage. So we're going to talk about what happens in this case. And in the beginning, the founder is usually the operations leader. The founder is usually everything. As the founder, you handle the clients, you make the decisions, you hire the staff, you solve the technology problems, you're dealing with the vendors. It's you looking over every invoice and improving. You're managing the office, the payroll. Hopefully you're creating the processes. You even probably know where everything in the office is stored. And when you're a solo or a very small firm, that works. But eventually something changes. The firm becomes more complicated. And it becomes more complicated than one person can effectively manage. And that's when the question becomes, who's actually running this business? And there are warning signs to all this. And there's warning signs to you spending your day putting out fires, and this is what you don't want to be doing. And the first warning sign is that you're spending more time reacting to what's happening day to day than actually leading. Your day starts with a plan, and then what happens is the emails come in. A team member, employee has a question. A client is upset. Someone can't access the system. An invoice needs approval. Maybe if you have if you have an associate, they need guidance. A deadline has been moved. Someone may call in sick, throw things off, and then suddenly, you're putting out all these fires one after one after one, and now it's 5:30, 6 o'clock, and you haven't actually worked on the things that move the firm forward because you were busy all day. You weren't necessarily business productive, and that's an operational problem. The second sign is when everyone comes to you. They're not empowered to make decisions by themselves. And we talked about this in the last episode about delegation. This is where all of that becomes important. If everyone in the firm comes to you for everything, you just don't have a delegation problem. You have a leadership structure problem. And so I want everybody to think about the questions they may receive every week. Can we hire this person? How should we handle it? Who is responsible for this? What should we do about this client? Can you approve? What's our process? If you're answering these questions over and over again, you're functioning as the firm's operations department, and that's probably not the best use of your time. And the third sign is that the growth in your firm feels chaotic. You're growing, but it doesn't feel good. You have more clients, you have more revenue, maybe more employees, maybe even more attorneys, and yet you're more stressed than you were when the firm was half the size it is now. And that's an important signal, because growth should create opportunity. It shouldn't consistently create chaos. And when growth creates chaos, there's often a structural problem underneath. The fourth sign is that nobody owns what we call the in-between. And this is one of the most common problems that we see. Everyone has a job, but no one owns the space between the jobs. So, the attorneys handle the legal work, the paralegals handle their responsibility, the administrative staff handle the administration, but who's looking at the organization as a whole, at the entire organization? Who asks, why are we doing things? Where are the bottlenecks? Why does this process keep breaking? Why are we spending too much time on this over here or that over there? Why did that client experience go so poorly? And what can we do to improve it? That's what an operations leader. They see the organization horizontally and not just through individual job description. So there's confusion about the role of a operations leader, what that leader actually does. And an operations leader isn't simply like an office manager with a more impressive title, and they aren't there to replace the managing partner. The job of the operations leader is to help translate firm's vision into execution. So the manager, the founder, develops this vision of what they want their firm to be, what it looks like now, what they want to progress into the future, and it's the job of the operations leader to actually put the processes in place to execute this. And that includes developing workflows, creating accountability, improving technology, managing vendors, reporting systems, building reporting systems, improving hiring and onboarding, developing the internal processes that help everything move along, being able to track performance, identify what's bottlenecking, what works, what doesn't, coordinating the team, helping the founder and the owners make better decisions, and the specific responsibilities of the operational leader. That's going to vary by firm. There's no one-all cookie cutter stamp to what the responsibilities of the operations leader would be, but the underlying purpose is consistent, and that's to make the organization work better. So you say, hey, I can't just bring someone on full time, and you don't necessarily need a full-time COO. Here's something important. When I say operations leader, I'm not automatically saying you need to hire a six-figure executive tomorrow, and because that's not always appropriate. Let's be realistic about it. But for some firms, the right answer may be a full-time operations manager. For other firms, it may be a director of operations. For others, it may be a COO. And for others who are even smaller or even as a stepping stone, the right move might make sense to bring in a fractional COO as a resource. And the title isn't the important part. The capability is. The question is, what level of operational leadership does your firm need right now? And just so we can let you know, in this moment, we do offer fractional COO service. Make sure you don't hire too late. You don't come to this realization too late, because one of the biggest mistakes I see is waiting until the firm is already overwhelmed and the owner said, we'll hire someone when we're bigger. But by then the problems have multiplied. the team is frustrated, the owner is exhausted, processes are inconsistent, and the person you're hiring now has to spend months simply just cleaning up the past. So try another approach. Try to bring in an operational leader before the next stage of growth requires. And what this does, it allows that person to build infrastructure while the firm is growing rather than trying to repair everything after. But what you want to do is you don't want to hire too early, because there's always two sides to the coin. You don't want to hire an expensive operations executive just because the idea sounds sophisticated. If your firm's too small or you don't have enough complexity, you may not have enough organizational infrastructure for that role to manage at that moment. So you might just need administrative support or better technology, or maybe a bookkeeper, or just an office manager, or even documenting your process. Not every operational problem requires an operations executive. The key is diagnosing the problem correctly. So if you're wondering whether your firm is ready for an operational leader, just ask yourself these 5 questions. One is, am I spending too much of my time managing the business instead of leading? So if you're constantly dealing with operational details, pay attention to it. Question 2 is, does the firm depend on me to make too many routine decisions? Not the key firm altering decisions, but just the routine decisions like ordering paper, things like that. If everything comes back to you, then it's a structural warning sign. Question 3, are we growing faster than our systems can handle? If the answer is yes, infrastructure needs attention. Question 4 is, do I have someone who is accountable for improving how the firm operates? Not maintaining things, but improving things. And that's an important distinction between just maintaining and improving. And then question 5 is, if we doubled in size next year, would our current structure survive? If the answer is no, you're probably already late to the party. So I think one question matters more than all the others. What do you want your job to be as a firm? Because eventually you have to decide. Do you want to spend your days solving operational problems, or do you want to spend them practicing law, developing clients, mentoring attorneys, setting strategy? Basically, do you want to spend your time building the future of the firm? So neither answer is wrong, but you need to be intentional about it. You need to decide who you're going to be, because if you don't decide what your role should become, your firm's going to decide. The right person can change your firm, because when you bring in the right operations leader into a firm, something very interesting happens. As the owner, you get breathing. Team gets clarity, because now everyone has defined jobs and roles. Problems have an owner and not brushed off to the next person or just left. The processes improve and accountability increases. And suddenly, as the owner, you have the ability to think about the future itself instead of constantly reacting to the present. And that's a powerful thing. Because sometimes the best investment in growing a law firm that you can make isn't another revenue producing attorney. It's a person who can help everyone else perform better. So here's something that you can do today. Take out a piece of paper, and I know I said this before. Write down everything you spent time on over the last 7 days, but don't categorize it yet. Just write it down, then highlight every task that could be handled by someone else, could be systemized, required you only because no one else owns it. If it pulled you away from high value leadership work, now look at that list. So let's go over it again. Write down 1, if it could be handled by someone else. Category 2, if it could be systematized. Category 3, if it required only you because no one else owns it. Number 4, pulled you away from high value leadership. If the list is long, that's your signal. You may not need another person simply to help you do more. You may need someone to help you move this firm and help it work better. So when you hire that first operations leader, that's the question. When do I do it? It's not necessarily when you hit 10 attorneys, not necessarily when you reach a particular revenue number, and not simply because someone told you that's what growing firms do. You should consider operational leaders when the complexity of your firm has outgrown the owner's ability to manage it effectively while still doing the work only the owner can do. I'll say it again. When the complexity of the firm has outgrown the owner's ability to manage it effectively while still doing the work only the owner can do. That's the threshold right there. Because eventually your firm needs more than just great lawyers. It needs leadership around the business. And that doesn't mean you're going to give up control. It means that you're building infrastructure necessary to use your time where it creates the greatest value. So thank you again for joining me. Another episode of Building Without a Blueprint. Next time, we're going to talk about something that often gets overlooked when firms are growing, and that's the difference between hiring help and building a team, because adding people to your payroll isn't the same thing as building an organization. Until next time, keep building intentionally, keep asking better questions, and remember, the goal isn't to build a firm that needs more of you. It's to build a firm that makes better use of you. Thank you again for listening to The Right Hand.